Right, folks, so very warm welcome to you. My name is Paul du Toit. Funnily enough, it's a French name. Some people don't know that. They think it's Afrikaans, but the Afrikaners actually stole it from the French when the Huguenots came over. So it's Paul du Toit. It's du Toit if you're Afrikaans. It's du Toit if you're English speaking, and it's Toy Toy if you're Zulu or Xhosa. So I'm happy to be called any of those. And the topic today is CX, which is the expression that is used for customer experience. I'm going to be chatting to you a little bit about the two sides of the coin. And it's also a way for me to demonstrate how we are able to run our training now on an online basis. So I'm using a program called eCam, which I use with my Mac. And it allows me to put slides on the one side. As you can see, there's a slide on one side, and then you can see me actually speaking to you. And there's various different things that I can do. For instance, if I want to make my my face round, I can do that, and I have a slightly different way of presenting it or whatever. So just a bit about congruence training. You can see our logo there at the bottom. We've been in existence for 26 years now, and our very first training course, once I stopped selling training and actually started delivering it, was in fact called Customer Relationship Skills. And to date, it's a course that we have sold more than, and we have delivered more than any other one of our programs. So it's really been our flagship. It used to be called Advanced Customer Relationship Skills, and then we eventually just dropped the advanced and called it Customer Relationship Skills because we deliver it at many different levels. I've also, since 1997, been delivering talks on customer service and customer experience. And what I'm going to deliver to you today in this half-hour session is simply just a few components from my talks and from our training session, which dovetail quite nicely to give you this concept of the two sides of the coin. And this particular concept, the two sides of the coin, is something that I've incorporated into many of my talks on customer relationships or, as such, customer experience. So let's just kick off there. And I want to just start off with a concept called the customer perception ladder. And the reason why I'm raising this right at the beginning is we all have some kind of perception about how our clients see us, what they think of us, whether they like us or not, how important we are. And generally what we tend to do is that we tend to overestimate our own importance in the eyes of our customers, which is a very normal and natural thing to do. In reality, your customers engaging with you is generally for a fairly selfish reason, because they need something from you, or they perceive that there's something that you've got that will help them to succeed in doing what they need to do. Now, I'm going to give you a quick example of just changing the shape of so that you can, there we go. All right. So I've taken some information from a writer called Roger E. Jones, where he divided customer perceptions into 4 levels. Now, this is a very a casual session that I'm having with you, so I don't mind saying to you that it's easy to break customer perceptions into 12 levels if you want to, or just 2 levels. But 4 is quite nice because one can get one's head around them. So I'm going to show you what they are quickly, and then what is a nice exercise that you can do after this. So one of the takeaways you can take from this exercise is to look at your customers, and it'll help you to identify which of those are key customers and which are, in fact, of lesser importance to your business. It doesn't mean that they're of lesser importance as customers, but in terms of their ranking in their importance to your business. So the first one, and if you see there is a little bit of a ladder there, a kind of a ladder. At the bottom it says price, at the top it says loyalty. When I've shown you this concept, I'm going to come back to that and show you how that works. I'm just going to put my speaker down a bit because I'm echoing in my own ear. There we go. So just to start off with, level 1 is what we refer to as the commodity broker. Now, the commodity broker is where there's a fairly short interaction. The purpose of the commodity broker is to broker the deal. They get as much money as they can out of it, and they leave, and there's no relationship. This level is fairly shaky in terms of customer relationships. There's a very low trust level. They're not loyal they're not loyal to you at all, and they are likely to leave you and go and do business with somebody else. So if you're perceived as just being a commodity broker, you're really of no value to your customer whatsoever, except what they can get out of it. The next level is quite interesting. It is the service provider. Now, you'll be familiar with that concept because we all have cell phone contracts. Some of us have got contracts with Telcom. We deal with internet providers that maybe give us our fiber or whatever. So we have that kind of relationship. Now, at level 2, you're not on a very high level, but it is a springboard where you can increase the value of your interaction or your relationship with that customer. Folks, if there's anyone that's not muted, if you don't mind, I'm just going to mute you quickly. There we go. All right. So level 2, the service provider, is it's okay. You have some kind of a relationship, but it's certainly not personalized. And if you think of your cell phone provider, that's the kind of level 2 that would be on the perception ladder. My personal experience, when I've dealt with my cell phone service provider, I don't get a particularly warm, fuzzy feeling. I feel that for a long time they charged me far too much. When I wanted to get hold of a human being, I had to go through this large, confusing menu and often ended up back at the same place that I started. So for me, that was a fairly confusing type of experience. Okay, so let's look at the next one. And the next level is your value adder. And this is a wonderful level on the perception ladder because this is where you have a great level of interaction with your customer. You're speaking to them on a personal level. And the whole idea of the value adder is that you have an opportunity to create a perception that what they are receiving from you is more than they're actually paying for. And that's a wonderful relationship to have with someone because guess what happens? They tend to come back and want to deal with you more and more and more because they feel that they're really getting good value. And the word value is key in customer relationships because generally these days, especially with the advent of increased customization, as people feel that they are getting high levels of value from you, they're going to continue building the relationship, and you would be able to do various things like upselling them and making them into a more valuable customer, adding more services to them, and just meeting that philanthropic part of your being where one likes to give. And I just want to put this into perspective as well. You know, as human beings, we are often in our professions and we do what we want to in order to give some kind of service to mankind. But there's always two sides to that coin as well, because in giving service to mankind, you can't give everything away or you won't be able to pay your bond and your bills. So we want to do it in such a way that we can earn something ourselves, but yet add tremendous value to our customers. So that's the value adder. I can give you a great example of a value adder. Let's say you go and buy a camera at a particular shop and you're trying to get a discount from them, and they say to you, well, actually, we don't do discounts. But what we will do is that if you come back to us exactly 6 months' time, and the person would write down a piece of paper the date, if you come back on that date, we're going to give you a free replacement battery because your battery is going to be taking a bit of strain, and those are the kind of things you get from us. Now, they didn't have to do that, but they swapped the discount that you wanted for providing something in addition. So what they did is that they gave you something instead of subtracting the value of what you were buying. And that's maybe a great example of a value adder. So the next person, or the next level on the perception ladder, would be the business partner. And the business partner is where there is codependence. There's an interdependence between the two of you. Like for instance, if you're running a McDonald's franchise and you're, let's say, getting your meat from two different butchers. Well, those butchers know that they can expect 50% of your custom on a weekly basis. They can gear up their operations. They can order according to that. So there's almost an interdependency. And the nice thing that you know if you run the McDonald's franchise is if one of the butcheries goes up in flames, at least you can increase your order with the other one and you've got a line of supply that's already set up. So, I mean, a butchery might be an unfortunate example, but it's an example that can be used. So That really is the perception ladder. Now, one of the most important things about the perception ladder is asking yourself, well, so what? The point really simply is that if you're at the bottom of the perception ladder on level 1 and you're perceived as being a commodity broker, the loyalty is basically 0. So when you get into a price negotiation, price becomes everything. The moment you move up to level 4, price no longer becomes an issue because you're dealing at a far higher level. It's become an extended value add. So you might have an annual negotiation where you agree on what the pricing is going to be, but the pricing doesn't become the issue that makes or breaks the deal. Why? Because a degree of loyalty exists. And the degree of loyalty, and this is key to the whole perception ladder, the degree of loyalty that you enjoy from your client is directly proportionate to your standing on the perception ladder with them. So I'll give you the takeaway right at the end on the perception ladder, but it is an important part of understanding the two sides of the coin, because the two sides of the coin, as you will see, gives us the key to how we should be looking at our customers and how we should be looking at the differences between customers and who a customer really is. And that takes us to the next question. What I'm going to do here quickly is I'm just going to move so that I can see all of you while I'm chatting. Okay, there we go. I've got a bit of a gallery view. Okay, and when we're looking at this, the question about what is a customer, I'm looking effectively at a definition. So if you can see the chat box there, let me just see if I can see the chat box. If you can maybe just put in the chat box your definition of a customer. Or if you want to, you can unmute yourself quickly and let us all hear what you have to say. What is a customer? How would you define a customer? For some reason, I'm not seeing the chat box, so let me just have a look. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so can anyone tell me how they would define a customer? If not, I'm going to chime in and tell you what our definition is. Okay, someone who buys a product or service. That's Lorraine. Bruce, the reason for your business. So I like that. It doesn't really define what a customer is, but it defines why that relationship is important. To Piet, a loyal paying friend. And depending on the kind of business, yes, they may be a loyal paying friend. Now, I want you to just have a look at this and kind of imbibe it quite deeply. Our definition that we coined a long time ago, we've been using with all our training, is a customer is a person with whom you have dealings. Now, there's a few important things here. The first one is the customer is not an organization. An organization is not your customer. Your customer is the people within that organization. But is it just an external customer? And we would like to think, no, it isn't. Our philosophy, quite simply, is that a customer is everyone that you have dealings with. So if it's everyone that you have dealings with, and in fact, is it only people that you have dealing with, or is it people that are going to be affected by the dealings that you may have with direct customers? So let's just have a look at that principle very simply. One gets indirect customers. So your indirect customers might be external to your business. So there may be someone that buys a hamburger from you, might be an external customer. But then what about this category of customer called an internal customer? In other words, the one within your business. Now, let me put this to you. And in fact, before I do that, let me just put this up. You get indirect and you get direct. So the direct customers are people that you are physically dealing with them. On an indirect basis, it might be some of Vodacom's customers because we often don't interact with an actual consultant, but we're dealing with statements that come through and we're getting a service, but we're not really getting a very personalized service. Okay. So under direct, you would get, I thought I'd closed my WhatsApp. Sorry about that. So you'd get external, you'd get internal, and then you would get something called the forgotten customer, which I'm going to explain to you as we move along. So in terms of the external customer, this is somebody outside of your business, but the internal customer is somebody that might work inside of your business. In other words, it might be a staff member. Now, the first thing about an internal customer is that it's not necessarily somebody who works for you. It can be somebody that works on the same level as you, and it can be somebody above you. So if you have a PA managing director relationship, in effect, they are one another's customers. And why do we say that the internal customer is so important? Okay, it's very simple. It's because you deal with your internal customers all the time, and it is your treatment of and communication with your internal customers that to a large extent determines how those people are going to be treating your external customers. So if the relations and the culture within your organization is not amenable to great service and great cooperation, you're going to find that that's going to offset itself in the relationships between your external customers and your internal staff. Now, by indirect, what I really mean is that in many businesses, you get what I refer to as a customer chain, where there are various different people that might deal with your customer before it actually gets to the customer or the end user. And just as an example, you might look at someone like Willie, for instance, who manufactures a particular component for a motor car. Now, that gets sold to the motor car company or to the mechanic, who then would put it in the vehicle, and the vehicle might be sold or delivered after a service to the customer. So they would not see the end user customer because there's a chain of people. So in his business, there are many, many hundreds and thousands of indirect customers that would deal or would get benefit from however good or bad the product is. And this is an important thing to understand, because essentially we have a narrow view of who the customer is. We think quite simply the customer is outside, they come, they buy a product, they leave, and that's the customer. But the customer is someone with whom one has dealings. And in one's interrelationships with other human beings, there are people outside of work that we deal with as well that, in a sense, shapes to a large extent how we are and the way we behave. And when I speak about the forgotten customer, what we're really speaking about is our family and close friends, people that we're dealing with when we get home. Often when we get home and we're tired, often when we leave home in the morning and we're in a hurry and we're irritable and we're not really at our best. So the question that I often ask people is that if you claim you're really great at customer service, have a look at how you deal with members of your family. Have a look at how you treat them. Have a look at how you speak to them. Is there respect between the two of you? And if that is in fact happening, it's a lot easier to transfer that behavior over into the workplace, because essentially you're a pretty nice person. Okay, so that's our concept of the customer. Now, where I'm going to take this is what happens with people is that from time to time we lose customers. In a family situation, somebody may leave home for some reason or other. People may get divorced. In the workplace, people may leave your business and go and work for somebody else. They may leave for all sorts of other reasons. And the question is, why do people leave? Now, there are lots of different stats about customer loss statistics. I'm going to look at a retail stat. It's a pretty well-researched and well-known stat, and it's not for the purposes of the exact percentages. I'm showing you this for the purpose of understanding the concept of why people leave and how we can impact customers leaving our business or people just not being interested in us anymore. So let's have a quick look at that. So the stats are, they leave because, so every year 1 or 2% of your customers might die. 3% might move away to a location where they cannot use your service. That obviously wouldn't apply to an internet type service, but it might be something where you have a store down the road or a shop down the road, and they move away and then they deal with somebody else. And they also could leave because a friend of theirs went into a competitive business and they decide that they want to support that friend. Okay, and then I've got a personal example of this. 9% may prefer another brand or model. So I was a BMW driver for a long time, and at the time that I needed a 4x4 because I was doing a lot of scuba diving, BM at that stage didn't have a suitably priced 4x4, so I moved over to Mitsubishi Pajero, and I stayed with them for about 20 years, and I'm now back with BM again. But I moved not because I was unhappy with the product, it was just simply because I preferred another model that BM didn't have in a comparable way. Okay. So if you look at those four and you add up those percentages, you're at 4, 9, you're at 18%. So where's the other 82%? Let's have a look. Surprisingly, only 14% of your customers leave due to an unresolved service problem. And to me, this was quite staggering because I would have thought that this would have been around about 50%. But it's not, it's only 14%. So here's the eye-opener. 68% leave because of the way they were treated. And I'm pausing for you to think about the significance of that stat. Because if you add the 14 and the 68 together, those were the two things that you really could have done something about in your business had you been aware of them. The other four, not much you could have done about them, but those two specifically, which is more than 80% of why customers leave, were because of a reason that you could have done something. And it's puzzling. And we need to ask ourselves, well, then why are our customers leaving? Okay. And this is where I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the two sides of the coin. So let's just, I'm just showing you this graphically first so that you can actually see. So there it is graphically displayed. So it's 82% simply because of reasons that you could have done something about. Okay, so let's move on to the two sides of the same coin, and this is where essentially my philosophy comes in about how customers are different and how they weight things differently. Now, what the two sides of the coin is about is, on the one side, and this is about the way we react to customer-related situations. Some of us are people-orientated. In other words, we love the interaction with people. We trade on stuff like friendliness and politeness and the feel-good factor and what have you. And some of our customers really respond to that because this is very important to them. And then on the other side, you get people that are very process-orientated. So in other words, record keeping, accuracy, preciseness, delivering on time, those sort of things are very important to them. So why have I called it the two sides of the coin? Well, that's very simple. We all value both of those sides of the coin. It's just that we value them in different percentages. So you might be one of those people that is highly balanced, and to you, the people side of it and the process or delivery side of it is equally important. But some of us are far more people-orientated than process-orientated. Others of us are much more process-orientated than people-orientated. Okay, so there's a couple of opportunities here. The one is to identify, are you people-orientated or are you more process-orientated? And if you're a more analytical or driving personality of person, you are probably more process-orientated. If you're a more amiable or expressive type of personality, the likelihood is that you are more people-orientated. So the question then is, what is the percentage? Are you 80% people-orientated and only 20% process-orientated? Because that, to a large extent, is going to determine how you're going to go about your job, what is important to you, how you interact with customers, your ability to solve problems, your ability to solve difficult situations. And this is really where the two sides of the coin is so critical in your interaction with your customers. Now, what I've done is that I've prepared a matrix for you. I'm going to pull it up quickly. And on that matrix, it really just shows the two sides of the coin as represented by 4 quadrants. I need to make myself a little bit smaller so you can see this properly. There we go. Okay. And then on the top, you've got nice. At the bottom, you've got grumpy. On the left, you've got inconsistent. and on the right you've got delivers. And what it does is it gives us 4 quadrants, where this quadrant are the organizations that you deal with when you have no choice. So you just have to think of telecom in the old days before we had cell phones. You had no choice. You had to deal with them. You look at the current unbundling of Eskom. We haven't had any choices until recently. Now, I know I myself now have solar in my house. That was a choice that I took on. But before, I had no choice. So they could be as inconsistent and grumpy as they like, but I had to deal with them. Okay, let's look at the next one. So the next one is, selectively is the word. So you'll deal with people that are nice but inconsistent when you're not in a great hurry, or the level of service or the level of consistency is not the most important thing, because they're nice people and it's a nice environment. So it might be a place out in the country where you go and have a Sunday lunch or something. Then we have these people. So they always deliver. They're very efficient, but they're grumpy and they're not friendly. So maybe it's your unfriendly hardware store down the road where the service isn't particularly good, but they've got everything that you need, so you always go there because it's just easier. And then you get these dudes. They are nice. They always deliver. They're friendly. They're quick. They're just perfect. They're just wonderful. You've been dealing with them for years, and with good reason, because they are fantastic. And this is obviously how you want your customers to perceive you. But what I want to illustrate to you what happens is that there are plenty of organizations that are quite happy to operate in the inconsistent and grumpy quadrant because there's no competition. But the moment you bring competition into it, it raises the level of your grumpy, or your guys that don't deliver properly, your inconsistent people, and eventually they need to change their game. So what effectively happens is, so you're introducing competition, and each of those bars shift. So the horizontal bar shifts downwards and the vertical one shifts to the side. And you get more and more organizations operating in the nice and delivers quadrant. So the significance effectively of the two sides of the coin is for you yourself to identify, am I more people orientated or am I more process orientated? How balanced am I, or am I quite lopsided in terms of being very much the one and very little the other? If you're weak in one particular area, let's say you're good at people and bad at process. I'm not saying throw away your being good at people. Keep that, but try and increase your level of process, because you'll find yourself in the nice and delivers quadrant, and it's going to increase the perception level of how you operate with your customers. Okay, so we've just about reached the half-hour mark, and I was going to do a little bit of a brainstorm with you, but I promised you this was going to be roughly half an hour, so I'm not going to take you too much over time. And you're not going to be upsold anything. I just wanted to give you some kind of example of our philosophy. I wanted to give you a little bit of a takeaway that you could use in dealing with your customers. And I want to perhaps just give you an example of how certain descriptive words might fall into the two different categories. So help could be both, because it's regarding process and people. Humor, that would be a people-orientated thing. Records, good record keeping, that's process-orientated. So to some people, that's incredibly important, and to your business, it's probably important, but maybe not on the forefront of your customer's mind. That your product works effectively, that's process and system. Accuracy, well, in fact, the product works could in fact be both, couldn't it? But accuracy is a system thing. Delivering on time, once again, mainly a process thing, but it also impacts the level of service that the people-orientated person is going to feel. So there's a bit of both there as well. Having a procedure booklet, in other words, a manual that shows you how the product works, very important. We know that half of the people don't look at the procedure booklet, but it's important to have. That the problem is resolved. Once again, that is more process-orientated, but it has a great bearing on how people are going to perceive it, the people-orientated folk. Politeness, well, that's a feel-good thing, so that's a people-orientated one. E-filing, very much process-orientated. Friendliness, very much people-orientated. Being able to empathize when there's a problem, very much people-orientated. And we could go on and on and on with plenty of different words, but I'm just using those words to describe how the two sides of the coin effectively work. Okay, so just in closing, I'm going to try and summarize 4 takeaways, which I hope that you will be able to go away with and utilize in your dealing with customers. Before I give those to you, I just want to mention to you that I do keynotes on customer experience and customer service, particularly about why customer service is so profitable for your business. And we run a 2-day program called Customer Relationship Skills. So here are the takeaways. The first one, on the perception ladder, that your customers may not view you as you think they view you. So have a critical look at those 4 levels on the perception ladder. And with regard to customers that you think are key customers of yours, ask yourself, do they see you as a business partner, or are you lower down on the perception ladder? With regard to the customer, I think that definition in a sense says it all. Customers are not just external customers. They are people within your organization. Some of them are direct, some of them are indirect. And you want to be very sure that the customers that you regard as key customers, whether they're internal or external, that they regard you in a very positive light. Otherwise, there's work to be done. Then there's number 3 about customer loss stats. And the big message there is quite simply that the way we treat customers is the strongest factor in determining their loyalty. It's not when things go wrong. When things go wrong, you're effectively given an opportunity to fix it up, and you can heighten the perception that the customer has of you by the way you fix it. But it's your overall treatment of that customer that is going to determine their loyalty towards you. And in any business, loyalty is the key word to keeping customers. And then finally, the last one, the 2 sides of the coin. Retain the skills of your strong side and develop the skills on your weaker side. So while you're on a mission to maybe get better at people orientation, if you're a process-orientated person, don't throw away the good side. Just build up the one that's weaker while retaining the one that's stronger, and get that balance so that you can be regarded as being nice and delivering.